Alrighty, I found this on my YouTubes. Ancient Native Americans were among the first coppersmiths. New dates show people worked pure ore nearly 10,000 years ago around the Great Lakes. Well, that's weird because when the Europeans landed in North America, my understanding was they didn't have any metalworking. I wonder what happened. Well, there's a video, so I'll put the video in and take it from there.
A fun fact: there were more copper mines operating in Michigan in 4000 BC than there are today. Actually, a lot more. Where today there is one mine producing copper and nickel in the Upper Peninsula, during the period from about 4000 BC, maybe earlier, to 1000 BC, copper mining was the region's major industry and produced its principal export commodity. Over that time, the early Native American groups belonging to what archaeologists call the Old Copper Complex operated more than 5,000 individual copper mines in the Great Lakes area. The ancient people were hunters, gatherers, and fishermen who moved around the region with the seasons and the wildlife. As they moved and worked, they used any material that was available to make arrowheads, fish hooks, harpoons, spear points, and tools like awls and adzes. Early on, these were mostly made out of materials like stone and antler, but sometimes starting around 6500 BC, a new material joined their repertoire. For the next 5 millennia, copper would be just as important. Eventually, it would give its name to their civilization as we know it.
Okay, so there was this Native American tribe in and around the Great Lakes area that figured out how to hammer copper. As far as this video tells, they didn't smelt it or anything, they just hammered it because the copper is so pure. Now, my question is, why did they stop? Why didn't they develop like bronze? And this video talks about it, so we'll skip ahead to those parts.
But in native copper, copper is the mineral, with no other elements. And that saves a step. You don't have to smelt copper to drive off the oxygen or the sulfur. You can just pick up a lump of metal and start hammering it into shape. At least, if you can pick it up.
So yeah, like I said, they didn't need to smelt it. All they had to do is hammer it into whatever shape they wanted. So there's convenience there, but there's a side effect. So let's get into that.
Why did the early Native Americans around the Great Lakes abandon copper in favor of stone when most societies around the world were making the opposite choice? The archaeological experiments have suggested that the switch from copper to stone may have been quite simply the practical choice in that particular regional context. Copper is more lustrous and prettier than most stones, so it's the practical choice for ornaments. But arrowheads, fishhooks, and adzes are a different story. Copper blades and points are somewhat more durable than their stone equivalents, but are actually heavier, softer, and less sharp, besides being more difficult to produce. In practical hunting or fighting applications, that means that copper is little better than stone, and sometimes worse.
So yeah, Native Americans were hunter-gatherers, and stone and bone is just more convenient. Copper, you have to mine it. That takes time, and you have to go out of your way to do it. With hunter-gathering, oh hey, look at this, I got an antler. I can sharpen it into a knife, a point. Or hey, here's a stone. We'll sharpen it into a knife or a spear tip. Same thing with bone. But if they were using copper for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years, how come they never developed bronze? Well, you know what? The woman explains that, too.
This problem, however, was not available in the Great Lakes region because of the geology. Around the world, most copper-using civilizations began to alloy copper with arsenic to create an arsenic bronze. At first, this happened by accident, since most copper ores in other parts of the world contained a good bit of arsenic, some of which would make its way into the metal when smelted. That cures the mechanical problems associated with pure copper, yielding a hard, strong, easily castable bronze metal unquestionably superior to stone. But around the ancient Great Lakes, there was no smelting, and there were no arsenic-bearing copper minerals.
Huh. So the development of bronze was completely by accident, because there was arsenic in copper that other civilizations were using. But these Native Americans, their copper was pure and it didn't have any arsenic in it, so they couldn't develop bronze. Interesting. And because they couldn't develop bronze, they figured, hey, stone and bone is better to work with and use than this copper stuff, so they just gave up copper. And if the development of bronze was completely by accident and by luck, what if these Native Americans had kept using copper? Maybe they would have gotten lucky, but instead, they gave up, and they went back to stone and bone. That's interesting, but also sad at the same time, because if they had kept using copper and were able to develop it into bronze, they could have advanced as a civilization, but instead they gave up on it. And I just found out about this stuff like a couple hours ago. I didn't even know about this, so this whole video was interesting. Well, anywho, that's it for my thoughts on this interesting video. I'll post a link to it in the description, of course. And, well, take care out there in Clown World.